Hey everybody, Cindy Teevens here from the Ego to Enlightenment workshop that we have now running. I am the spiritual facilitator who gets really, really real. And as a result, we get real results. You'll see that in the community. We have some people in the group who have been through the program, and they're more than willing to share. I'm sure if you asked them, they would tell you whatever you'd like to know. So I today just thought I'd hop on here because, well, there's a lot going on. I just released the schedule for the Ego workshop, and it's quite intense. I'm going to be talking about the top 10 spiritual challenges. We've been surveying our members, and we've got some very interesting results back from that. So I'm just going to go over to the group, make sure that, that we're broadcasting okay and that everybody can hear me. Let me know if you're there and watching that you can hear me. That would be awesome. Give me a little sound check. Give me a little hello. I'm going to talk about the survey, the top 10 spiritual challenges. I'm going to talk about the transformation. What happens? Why do we do this inner work? Where were we before? What are we looking forward to? And what's that like? You know, there's a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of ideas out there of what this thing called enlightenment really is, and what it'll do for you, what it won't do for you. These are great subjects. And I'm just going to pop in and just check in, make sure that I am visible and being seen live. Okay, I see there, we are there now. Can anybody hear me, see me? I would appreciate a sound check on that, just to be sure I don't say anything really good that nobody can hear. So is anybody out there? Please say hello. So if you haven't taken the survey yet, please do that before Thursday, because that's when we're going to start revealing. Thank you, Monica, for letting me know I'm visible, but am I audible? Can you also hear me? Please take the survey. You can only take it once. There's only one question. It's a big, long survey. And it's really going to help us. I want to find out what the #1 spiritual challenge is for people. Why? Because we want to help them with it, right? If we can identify it, I can really help people along with wherever they're stuck, whatever they're challenging with. And if you're in the group, you can find that people are already having some breakthroughs just from the back and forth banter. Hey, I'm audible too. Thanks, Monica. That's great. So I know there were a few people that were hanging around. I asked if anybody wanted to chat tonight, and I got about 4 yeses. So I thought I'd just jump on here. And there we go. We have 6 people watching. That's great. So, talking about the transformation that we're all seeking, and even if we don't know exactly what it is, we know that we want it. Well, we certainly know that we don't want the experience that we've been having, right? So that's why we do the inner work. We want to get real results. And I tell you, in order to share what is possible with this transformation, I need to share where I was before, because it seems to me that what I found and what you're looking for are one and the same thing, because it was what I was looking for. So it was back in 2009 when I was suffering very severely for something that many people think that's nothing to suffer about particularly. And it was a case of, you know, being dumped, a common, very common experience. But maybe what was uncommon, or maybe not so uncommon, was the degree to which I suffered over it. It was brutal. I was intensely brutal upon myself. Didn't know it was me. I thought it was them. I thought it was, you know, the other person. We always do. We think that something, person or event, can make us happy or make us unhappy. And so we suffer that. And because it's not true, number one. That's not what's actually making us happy or unhappy. And so until we know what's really going on, we can't do anything about it. We can't stop. And I was so debilitated that I couldn't function very well at all. Not even minimally functioning. I was laying around in bed a lot. If that had gone on much longer, I probably would have become so depressed, I would have sought medical care. But before that happened, I looked within. Because in the middle of that suffering, I heard or knew that I can give myself whatever I want, because my suffering was all about wanting. And our suffering is always about wanting. Whether we want something or someone, or we don't want something or someone, it's still a want. And this became very patently obvious to me, because it did seem a little bit insane that I wanted something I didn't have, and there was no sign of me ever getting. And so ultimately I came to a point of, well, realization and acceptance, I'm not going to get what I want, but do I still want to be unhappy? And in the middle of that suffering, of that intensive wanting, I heard or knew, you can give yourself whatever you want. And I didn't know where that came from. I'd never heard that before. But if it were true, I knew then that what I want is not out there. And I always knew that mentally. And I hear my members say this all the time. I know it mentally, but I want it in my bones, in my cells. What does that mean? That means they want to know it like they know the back of their hand, right? Undeniably, irretrievably, it can't be lost. It's just a fundamental reality, a fact, a truth. That's what they want. They want the truth. The truth that doesn't come and go, that doesn't leave you, something reliable. Yeah, people are not reliable, as you may have noticed. Generally speaking, life is not reliable. It is constantly changing. Well, you can rely on it to change, but that's about the only thing. So we want somehow, in the midst of all this unreliability, we want reliable happiness. We want reliable joy. We want reliable love. We want reliable peace. And that makes total sense, because that is your true nature. And it's your birthright. And you should have it. Why don't you have it? You don't have it because you have attributed it to, you've attributed the eternal to things that are not eternal. You have attributed the things that are infinite to things that are finite. And these things will come and go, totally unreliable. And if you attribute your peace, your love, your happiness, your joy to those things, you will be very unhappy. Very unhappy. As long as you do that. That could be your whole life. And so in the midst of that suffering, something happened that I didn't have words for, that I couldn't explain. But I went from this intensive pain, excruciating pain, to sudden love, joy, peace. Like that, boom. And this never happens generally with people. Usually you suffer for a long time and you gradually forget to suffer. We say that time heals. It's not that time heals, it's that you forget to suffer. Life goes on, you do other things. Or some people don't. Some people stay with the suffering movie in the mind their whole lives and get depressed, become suicidal. So what's the difference? You know, my father got so depressed, he died by suicide. Why didn't I? It's not the thought of suicide didn't arise. It did. But I had promised him that his suffering would not be for nothing. I had promised him that the family's suffering and my suffering would not be for nothing. And I had no clue what that meant at all. At the time, I thought maybe it had something to do with finances because he struggled with that, and so did I. But that's a symptom, not a cause. It doesn't matter what's going on the outside. You could be poor and the most blissful person. We've all heard the stories. So what's going on? What was the difference? Because it happened so dramatically, because I was in such an intense suffering, that it so dramatically switched over into love, joy, peace. It was mind-blowing, but I saw it and I watched it because I was mind-blown. I was shocked. How can that be? And mine said, well, it can't be. You know, you have to suffer because A, B, C, D has happened. And I was like, but wait a minute, that felt good. I don't care what mine says. This feels good. It kind of reminds me of doctors, you know. I got very sick last year eating wheat, and very, very sick. They tested me for everything celiac, and they found nothing, nothing that they know of anyway. And so it gets relegated to something called anecdotal, like it doesn't exist. It's not real. This sudden cure when I quit eating wheat. I'm sorry, it's real. You can call it whatever you want, anecdotal. It's real. And this was real. This shift was real. And so I went back and I tried it again and again and again. And I learned how to not suffer. I learned what the true cause of our suffering is. I learned how to be happy. I learned love, joy, and peace. No matter what. Okay? No matter what. I mean, I was hit from behind in a motor vehicle accident twice. Once on a scooter where I hit the windshield of the car. I was laying there strapped down for the second time in the hospital with my hand going numb. And the doctors had, you know, poked underneath and tested and elicited a lot of pain. So they after the x-ray, they sent me for an MRI, and it didn't look too good. But I was laying there and looking up at the lights, the honeycomb shape, and they were so beautiful. And the thought came, I may never walk again. And I went, oh, so I can still talk. Most people here know I can talk. I do like peace and quiet. Most people don't know that side. They don't see that side. Of course, when I'm with you, I'm talking. But that peace has never left. That joy has never left. That love has never left. No matter what. I have friends passed by cancer. I had struggle with money. Didn't get any better quickly. Eventually it did. But I had nothing going for me in the conventional sense of what we think will make you happy, of what people want, you know, the career, the bank account, the friends, the family, the children, the house, whatever, the assets. I didn't even have my health at that time. I actually was in excruciating pain shortly after because of those two accidents. I had spinal injury and spinal pain for 2 years until it healed. It was on a daily, nonstop basis. I didn't take meds for it because I didn't want to do meds. So I don't complain. But it did go away. Amazingly, the pain went away. Took 2 years. You never know. You just never know. So there I was, in sudden happiness, joy, bliss, for no reason that the mind would normally attribute it to. And it happened so dramatically, I saw it happen. And so habitually, because I'd been suffering a lot, the suffering would come back. And then I would shift again. And the suffering would come back. And I would shift again. And the suffering would come back. And I would shift again. You get the idea? I persisted in shifting no matter what, every single time. And every single time, I felt better. I got relief. And I stayed with it as long as I could. And eventually, I began to stay there all the time. I was going around on a high. I was experiencing states of bliss and love and joy, because after the relief, the initial relief from suffering, I noticed there was this joy. And I became interested in the joy. Okay, that's a little bit of an understatement. I became obsessed with the joy, obsessed with the love. I pursued it like a lover. Because I found that we are like children in a candy store, and all the candy is free and unlimited, but it'll never make you sick. And the candy is love and joy. And it is yours for the taking, if you'd only take it. So 9 months of that, no matter what happened, practically, there were a few instances of what I'll call unconscious suffering. And they were quite a surprise when they happened, but I continued doing what I was doing. Those continued until I had what I call the direct seeing in the woods. And after that, that stopped. And what is that? That is knowing that you're suffering, not really knowing why, and not knowing what to do about it. And I had nobody to guide me. I had absolutely nobody. I was completely, practically isolated. But I learned through those experiences by paying attention. And that's what we have to do. We have to pay attention. We cannot, paying attention means what? It means not going into the mind and not imagining or thinking what might be going on, trying to figure it out on the level of the mind. This is just spinning the mind. And you'll hear me talk about in the program, the movie in the mind. And we all have these movies playing. Most of us don't know it. And the movies are what causes the suffering when you are unconsciously living in the movie in the mind. So after the 9 months, everything wasn't perfect still by far in my life, and it still isn't, but it is. It is perfect as it is. I wanted only one other thing. I didn't want anything more of the world. Nothing. I didn't want to get anything, and I really didn't have this aversion to anything. I mean, if something came up that had to be taken care of, money, finances, whatever, then, you do the best you can. But this urge to have a purpose in life, to do something, to become something, to stop something, to gain something, to not lose something, it was gone. I call this stage equanimity. You'll see that in the 7 stages of ego to enlightenment. Equanimity, where, because everything is equal, you don't need to seek anything. And you don't get your joy from things like you used to think you did. You never got your joy from things. It never happened. You never got your love from people. It never happened. We imagined it did. And that's what caused all the problems. And so with this equanimity, with always being in love, joy, peace, you detach from the world. It doesn't mean you don't care. You take care of the world, absolutely. But you're free. It doesn't matter what happens. You're free. You're okay. And that equanimity, it is so juicy. I was going to say, there's no words for it. That comes the closest. It's so stable. It is so reliable. It is so eternal. It is so permanent. It is so spacious. And it is here for anybody, right here, right now. Available, always. And all you need to do is look at it, and you shall have it. Another way it was put in the Bible, ask and you shall receive. It's not really just even asking. It's not a mental thing. Look for it. Look for love. You'll find it. Look for joy. You'll find it. Look for peace. You'll find it. That's what I learned. Don't look for a thing to give you the love, joy, peace. Don't look for a middleman, that in between person or being or entity or thing or whatever. It's not there. Your peace, your joy, your happiness is not there. Your misery is there. You say to yourself, I can't be happy until I have this or that or him or her. And so you make yourself miserable. Yes, we've been doing this to ourselves. And I quit doing that. And it is delightful, it is blissful. You do not, and contrary to what a lot of people think, you don't need to be in pain. This weird idea out there, a new age idea that you need to suffer in order to know joy. If that were the case, I mean, imagine what it would be like. Every day you'd have to suffer for 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, now I can be happy. Now I have to suffer. Oh, now I can be happy. This is insane. Okay, then this is just not the way it is. So, yes, you can be happy all the time. Yes, you can be at peace all the time. And it doesn't mean you don't care about people at all. In fact, you care even more. Okay, compassion comes out because you see people suffering and you know they don't have to. And your compassion is the wish that people don't suffer. It's not this empath idea, another nonsensical new age thing that I can feel other people, I'm an empath, I'm sensitive. Yeah. You're sensitive to your mind, your story, because you're paying too much attention to it. You can't feel somebody else's pain. You don't have their body or their nervous system. That was just a little aside. So compassion is the wish. It's sweet, it's heart-cracking that people don't suffer, that's all. And you're much more available to people when you're not in your own suffering. I say the best way to end somebody else's suffering is to end your own. End your own about their suffering. Because you're not doing them any good by suffering in your own way or along with them. So what is it like? The ultimate that everybody is after, you've heard of it. You've heard the word oneness or one. And you can't conceive of one. Well, you can. You don't want to try really hard. You don't want to because you want to keep you. And in order to know one, you must give up you. The you who you think you are is not your true self anyway. So you'd be losing nothing of value. But you don't know that. And so that's where fear comes. The experience of seeing, knowing directly everything as the one removes all fear. All fear of other, or all fear of the world, all fear of death. What is there to fear? Who is there to fear? Without fear, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. You can, be with who you want. Leave who you want to leave. Complete freedom. That's what comes with realizing the truth. Realizing the truth of who, what you are in the world is. So how do you do this? You have to get real. Okay, you have to throw away the stories in the mind, the spiritual fantasies that we have, like I'm a spiritual being. No. Yeah, spiritual being having a human experience and all this nonsense. This is a thought. Can you tell this is a thought? If you can tell this is a thought, you know it's a thought. It's not a thing. It's not a real thing. It's a concept. It's just imagination. It might have served you at some point for some time, but if we want to end our suffering, our individual and our collective suffering, we need to grow up. We need to get real. And so you need to become a reality lover. Learn to love reality. Learn to step out of the movie in the mind, which is the illusion. It's the coarse portion of the illusion, of the dream. It's the first step. Become a reality lover, which means you prefer the reality over the story, and you do the reality checks, which we're going to talk about in the program, so that you can know the difference between the reality and the movie and the mind, and keep practicing that, and keep, being vigilant and watching. you need to be vigilant until this is automatic and natural, and you don't need to be vigilant anymore. So what can this do for you? Yeah, it will transform your life from the inside out. So is it worth it? Absolutely. I urge everyone to become a reality lover. Just adopt that idea about yourself. It's a useful idea for now. No idea is the absolute truth of you, but it is a useful idea for now that can help you discern and separate yourself from the false. All right. If you do the inner work, you will be rewarded for it. Okay. I'm going to look to the group now and see, we've got a few people there, maybe a couple questions. Got 20 some odd people watching somewhere in the world. Thanks for coming and being here with me. Shelby Steele says, I've had suicidal depression every day for the past 20 years, and I'm starting to think it might be diet related. I say never, to anything, but suicidal depression, are you on drugs? You'd be amazed how many people take their drugs from their doctor and never read about the drug. And I've worked with people who read what their drug, they're given a drug to fall asleep at night, and it has suicidal ideation as a side effect. And when they quit that drug, the suicidal ideation went away. So if your diet is really bad enough to make you sick, physically sick, then mental, emotional sickness may come with that. But if you're not having any physical sickness, I question whether it's diet, but hey, who knows, right? So do everything you can, test everything you can. Look at the meds you're on closely. Look at their side effects. And if you see suicidal ideation in there, don't just stop the meds, okay? Go to your doctor and tell them you want off them, maybe you want on something else, whatever, but work with your doctor. Because cutting cold turkey could be the absolute worst thing you could ever possibly do. If you have depression, your thinking has degenerated as far as suicidal thoughts. This is what happens. The movie and the mind degenerates. The whole movie feeling, the body-mind is one. It's not two. So when you engage in a sad or depressing story in the mind, you depress the body, and then worse thoughts will come, and that will depress it worse, and then worse thoughts will come, and it just spirals downward. You need to reverse this, okay? You need to learn to reverse. If you're going to suffer over something, suffer over a good thing. Suffer over a good movie in the mind as a cure to this, until you wake up completely from all movies in the mind. Alice asks, can you give us tips on how to work when you do not have this spontaneous access to a good feeling? You always do. You just have to learn to get it, okay? How to then pull away from the movie in the mind if you cannot access a good feeling. Yes. Yeah, you can access a good feeling. The idea that you can't is something you shouldn't stop at. Most people will go, oh, I feel bad, I feel bad, I feel so bad. And then they'll go, okay, a good feeling. And they'll try it like, 3 seconds or 4 seconds or 10 seconds or 15 seconds. I'm sorry. 15 seconds until the next thought that comes up that says, I can't do it. It's not here. That's not good enough. You have to learn to ignore these thoughts, okay? Because you can. You can ignore thoughts because thoughts are nothing. And I don't care what a thought says. If you do care what a thought says, then you will suffer the thought. You can let any thought come if you don't care what a thought says. Oh, I thought, yeah, whatever, okay? This is using your powers. We're going to talk about them later. I'm not going to go into them now, but it's using your powers correctly. And what's been happening when you get in depression or suicide, you've been using your powers incorrectly because you didn't know it. That's all. You just didn't know. So stick around, do the work. Not just listen, but do what I say. Try on what I say. You have to have the experience in your own direct, immediate experience. Put it to the test. Don't believe me just because I say it, but don't not believe me. Try it on, okay? Check. And don't believe a thought that tells you you can't do it or it's never happened or blah, 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 blah. Do a real check. It's like if, you know, I told you the stove was hot. Don't believe me the stove is hot. Go find out, okay? Get real. That's what we're all about here, getting real. Okay, there's no more questions there. So I've been on long enough, nattering away. I hope I've inspired you more toward wanting the freedom that is your birthright, the love and joy that is yours now and forever, for the mere taking. Okay? If not, keep coming back. Keep hearing it again and again. Keep asking questions. Keep looking. Keep trying it on. I appreciate it if this has had some value for you. If you would join the egoworkshop.com if you want to get more. We got a whole bunch of great stuff coming. So go to egoworkshop.com and join up there to make sure you don't miss anything. And also please take my survey so I can get the best size sample to know that we've got the #1 spiritual challenge. And we're going to rip it to shreds and get it out of your way, okay? All right. This has been, again, Cindy Teevens, creator of the Ego to Enlightenment workshop, which is now on until July 26th. So take advantage while you can. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. Keep it real. We'll see you next time.